My name is Jessica Webb. I'm 38 years old, and I fix industrial electrical systems for manufacturing plants down by the Rickenbacker area south of Columbus. It's not the kind of job people clap for. It's the kind where you wake up at 5 o'clock a.m., your coffee tastes like burnt patience, and you come home when the sky's already gone dark, hands smelling like metal and dust, brain still buzzing with the sound of panels humming. Christmas night last year didn't start as a catastrophe. It started the way it always did, me telling myself, just get through it, just one night, smile, keep the peace. But the truth is that Christmas had been building for 10 years, like a crack spreading through glass, silent, slow, unstoppable. I met Ethan Mitchell 11 years ago because I got careless for half a second. I was troubleshooting an industrial panel when something surged wrong. One sharp flash, a violent sting up my arm. The burn wasn't life-threatening, but it was bad enough that my supervisor shoved my keys into my palm and told me to get to the ER. Mount Carmel East, East Broad Street. I remember the smell of antiseptic and old coffee, the fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly unreal, like life had been drained of warmth. And then Ethan walked in. He was night shift, calm in that practiced way nurses are calm, like chaos is just another thing they manage. He wrapped my hand, asked me questions, and when I tried to joke through the pain, he laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one, the kind that makes you forget you're hurting. We talked for 2 hours while we waited for discharge papers, and somewhere in that conversation, Ethan told me he had a little girl, Lily, 4 years old. Her biological mother had disappeared before Lily turned 1. No goodbye, no birthday calls, no child support, just absence. Ethan was doing it alone, working nights, renting a tiny apartment in Whitehall, 15 minutes from the hospital. He said it like it was normal, like it didn't tear him open, like he'd already learned the trick of surviving. You don't complain, you just keep going. The first time I met Lily was on my 3rd date with Ethan. Waffle House on Hamilton Road. Yellow lights, sticky tables, the kind of place where the air tastes like syrup and resilience. Lily sat in a high chair, tiny hands gripping a plastic fork, looking at me like I was a stranger she hadn't decided to trust. I didn't know what to do, so I sat down and asked, "What do you like to eat?" She stared at me for a long moment, then said very seriously, "Pancakes," with smiley faces. Simple, but something in my chest shifted, because in that moment, I wasn't just falling for Ethan. I was falling into the shape of a family I didn't even realize I'd been starving for. After that, life didn't slam into place. It slid. Quietly. Naturally. Like it had been waiting. At first, Lily called me Miss Jessica, then Jess. And one day, when she was half asleep on my couch after I'd read her a bedtime story, she murmured, "Night, Mom, Jess." Ethan's eyes met mine from the doorway. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. I took Lily to Schiller Park in German Village on Saturdays, taught her to ride a bike on that little path by the Scioto River, packed her lunches when Ethan slept after night shifts, learned how she liked her grilled cheese, extra crispy edges, no tomato soup because it tastes like sadness. I treated her like my daughter, even without paperwork. 2 years after Ethan and I moved in together, Mason was born, 8 years old last Christmas. All elbows and energy and justice in his bones. And the sweetest part was Lily, 7 at the time, acting like Mason had arrived specifically for her to love. She'd help Ethan change diapers, sing nonsense lullabies she made up, and glare at anyone who said Mason was too loud, like they'd insulted her religion. Watching the two of them together, I used to think, we made it. We're the lucky ones. But there was always a dark corner I refused to look at. My parents. Harold and Patricia Webb, retired in Westerville. Dad used to be a warehouse manager. Mom was an accountant for a dental office. Stable people, ordinary people. And for 10 years, they never accepted Lily. Not with screaming cruelty, not with outright abuse. Worse, with polite indifference, Lily was a shadow at family gatherings. A name said with flat mouths. A child who got the cheap gift while Mason got the expensive one. A plate set for her at dinner, but no one asking what she liked. No one learning her favorite color. No one hanging her school photos on the wall. I saw it all. I knew it all. And I kept telling myself time would soften them. I told myself love could be taught. I was wrong. Time didn't soften anything. Time just let it ferment. So Christmas night came, and my parents' house looked exactly the same as every year. The old plastic tree they'd bought from a Kmart that died 15 years ago, cheap cinnamon candles, and piles of gifts under the tree that didn't even pretend to be equal. The left stack was 3 times taller than the right. You didn't need a detective to know what that meant. The moment we walked in, my mother's face lit up. "Mason!" she squealed, scooping him into a hug like he was oxygen. Lily stood beside me, holding a paper bag with a gift she'd made herself, smiling that careful smile she used when she already expected to be disappointed. Mom glanced at Lily and gave a small nod, like Lily was a neighbor kid, like she was optional. Ethan's fingers brushed mine, his silent question, "Should we stay?" I squeezed his hand back like I could physically force optimism into existence. Dinner was tense, dressed up as small talk. Mom asked Mason about school, his grades, his youth football team. Dad kept his eyes on the TV until Mason ran over, then suddenly he was all warmth and laughter. Lily got one of those hollow questions people ask when they don't plan to listen. "You doing okay, sweetie?" And before Lily even answered, the conversation moved on. Then came gift time. Mason was called up first. He ripped paper like a hurricane, and when he saw the box, his eyes exploded with joy. A Nintendo Switch, 2 controllers, 3 games. Dad stood up, patting his shoulder, pride on his face like he'd personally invented childhood happiness. "I knew you liked gaming. You've been such a good boy this year." Then Lily's turn. She walked to the smaller pile, picked up the only box with her name on it. I saw the size and already knew. She unwrapped it carefully. A children's makeup kit from Claire's, pink plastic and glitter meant for a 7-year-old. Lily was 14, but she didn't flinch, didn't complain. She looked up with that practiced smile and said softly, "Thank you, Grandma. Thank you, Grandpa. I love it." My chest tightened so hard it felt like something inside me was cracking. Because I knew she was lying. And I knew she'd been forced to learn that kind of lying, polite, survival-shaped, for 10 years. Then Lily stood up. Her hands trembled as she lifted the paper bag she'd been clutching all night. She walked to my mother, voice gentle, hopeful in a way that made my stomach turn with dread. "Grandma, I have a gift for you." Mom blinked, surprised, like the idea of Lily giving her something hadn't occurred to her as possible. Lily pulled out a blue scarf. Not perfect, uneven stitching, loose in some places, too tight in others. But I knew what it cost her. 2 months of YouTube tutorials, countless nights unraveling and re-knitting until her fingers hurt. Ethan had told me he'd found her crying once because she'd messed it up again. And then the next night she tried again anyway. Lily held it out like it was a piece of her heart. "I thought this color would look good on you. I made it myself." The room went silent. Even Dad looked away from the TV. Mason stopped mid-celebration and stared. My mother took the scarf, held it up, looked at it for one long moment, and then she smiled. But the smile was cold enough to drop the temperature in the room. She placed the scarf on the table with the care of someone setting down junk mail, and she said calmly, clearly, like she was doing Lily a favor by being honest. "Thank you, dear, but I have to tell you the truth. Your boyfriend's kid doesn't have the right to call us Grandpa and Grandma. I only have one grandchild." Time stopped. Lily froze. Her eyes went wide, then glassy, then red, like someone had poured heat behind them. But she didn't cry. 10 years of being treated like an outsider had taught her how not to cry in front of people who didn't deserve her tears. Ethan's chair scraped back. I stood up too, blood roaring in my ears. But before either of us could speak, Mason moved. My 8-year-old son set his new game down, like it suddenly disgusted him. He walked over to Lily, took her hand, and turned to face my mother. His voice was clear, steady, not loud, just final. "Grandma, if you're not Lily's grandma, then you're not mine either." My mother went pale. My father jerked up from his recliner, anger rising like a storm. But Mason wasn't finished. He shrugged off the brand new jacket Grandpa had just given him, laid it neatly on the floor beside the Nintendo Switch, and still holding Lily's hand, he walked toward the door. No hesitation. No looking back. My father roared, face red, voice shaking the walls. "Jessica, is this how you're raising your son?" I turned slowly and looked him dead in the eye. 10 years of swallowing shame. 10 years of hoping. 10 years of silence. It all ended right there. "No," I said, my voice calm, colder than I'd ever heard it. "You raised him. He learned from you how to treat someone he loves." Then I took Ethan's hand, and we walked out behind our children. Nobody stopped us. Nobody followed. Just the sound of the door closing, sharp and final, like the end of a chapter I'd been trapped inside my whole life. The drive home felt like it took hours, even though it was only 25 minutes down I-270. No one spoke. Ethan sat beside me, shoulders tight, wiping tears with the back of his hand like he was ashamed to be seen crying. In the back seat, Mason still held Lily's hand like he was afraid if he let go, she'd disappear. Lily stared out the window, silent. And then, somewhere around the Reynoldsburg exit, the tears finally started sliding down her cheeks. Not loud sobbing, not dramatic. Just tears, quiet, heavy, honest. And that hurt more than yelling ever could. Because it meant she was used to this. It meant she'd been carrying this feeling for so long that even humiliation had become something she could survive without making a sound. My hands clenched on the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I wanted to rewind time, 10 years back, to the first day I'd introduced Lily to my parents, to the first warning sign I'd ignored, to the first cheap gift I pretended didn't matter, to the first time Lily's smile looked too practiced, and I told myself it was just shyness. The kind of regret that hits you isn't gentle. It's violent. It's a mirror shoved in your face. When we got home, Lily walked inside without saying a word, her shoulders rounded like she was trying to make herself smaller. Ethan hovered in the doorway, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space. Mason didn't hesitate. He tugged Lily's sleeve. "Come on," he said. "You're sleeping in my room tonight, or I'll sleep in yours. I don't care." Lily blinked at him, startled, like she couldn't believe anyone would choose her so quickly, so fiercely. "Buddy," I started, voice cracking. Mason looked up at me with that blunt and child certainty adults lose somewhere along the way. "They were mean to her," he said simply, "so we left." That was it. No debate. No, but their family. No excuses. Just right and wrong. Mason turned back to Lily. "If anyone says mean stuff again, I'll punch them." "Okay, no punching," Ethan said automatically, but his voice wobbled. Lily's lips twitched, almost a smile. Almost. Like the muscle wasn't used to it. When the kids went upstairs, I stood in the living room staring at the closed staircase like it was the entrance to another life, one where I had done better. Ethan came up beside me. He didn't speak at first. He just slipped his hand into mine. And in that silence, the shame finally found its words. "I should have stopped it," I whispered. "Years ago." Ethan squeezed my hand so tight it grounded me. "You did tonight." That wasn't comfort. That was a challenge. Because tonight didn't erase a decade. Around 11 p.m., the house finally went quiet. Mason and Lily had fallen asleep on Lily's bed, their bodies angled toward each other like a pair of exhausted soldiers. Ethan stood in the doorway for a long time watching them, eyes red, jaw tight. Then he stepped back and closed the door softly, like he was protecting something sacred. I went to our bedroom and sat at the desk in the corner, my old laptop staring back at me like it already knew what I was about to do. I logged into my bank account. The familiar list loaded. Recurring payments, automatic transfers, little monthly sacrifices I justified as duty. Monthly support from my parents, $850. Supplemental health insurance for Dad, $200. House maintenance fund, $150. A clean total, $200 every month. Not counting the emergencies, not counting the money that went to my younger brother Tyler whenever he came knocking with another business idea. I stared at the numbers. 10 years of this. 10 years of paying people who looked at Lily like she was a guest who stayed too long. The cursor hovered over the first payment. My finger hovered over the trackpad. And for a moment, I heard my mother's voice again. Calm, cruel, casual. "Your boyfriend's kid doesn't have the right." My throat tightened. My eyes burned. I clicked. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this payment?" My heart pounded like I was committing a crime. I clicked yes. The first payment vanished. The second payment sat there like an accusation. I clicked again. Then the third. Each click felt like cutting invisible cords, painful, but also freeing. Like I'd been carrying a weight for so long that my body forgot what standing upright felt like. Behind me, Ethan's footsteps approached. He rested a hand on my shoulder. I felt the warmth of him, the tremble of him. "Jess," he said quietly, "I don't want you to lose your family over this." I didn't turn around. "They lost me 10 years ago," I said, voice low. "I just didn't admit it." Ethan's fingers pressed into my shoulder like he was trying to hold me together. "Maybe your mom just spoke without thinking," he murmured. "Maybe she'll regret it." I finally turned to face him. In his eyes, I saw what broke my heart the most. Guilt. That familiar guilt of the single parent who thinks they're always the reason people leave. As if Lily being born was an offense. As if Ethan and Lily had to earn basic dignity. I reached for his hand and pulled him into the chair beside me. Ethan, I said slowly, carefully, listen to me. Lily has been calling them Grandma and Grandpa since she was 4. They had a decade to change, a decade to love her, even a little. He swallowed hard. And tonight, I continued, they proved they never intended to. Ethan's eyes overflowed. He blinked the tears away like he hated them. I shut the laptop. I thought that was the hardest part. I thought it would end there, with boundaries drawn, with silence settling in, with my parents forced to sit in the consequences of their own ugliness. I was wrong. Because the next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. sharp. The screen lit up with my mother's name. Patricia Webb. I stared at it for 2 full rings, feeling my stomach twist. Ethan stirred beside me in bed. His eyes opened, worried even before he understood why. I slipped out into the hallway and closed the door softly, like the sound might wake the kids, or wake the part of me that still wanted to forgive too easily. I answered. Jessica, my mother said, and her voice was tight, trying to sound calm, but failing. Is there something wrong with the bank? Your dad says his insurance payment didn't go through. I leaned my head back against the wall, eyes closed. Nothing wrong with the bank. Just something wrong with the story she'd been telling herself for 10 years, that she could take from me while denying my daughter. I canceled it, I said. Silence. The kind that stretches long enough for you to hear your own heartbeat. You what? She whispered, like she'd misheard. I canceled everything, I repeated, all the recurring payments. Her breath hitched. Then her voice snapped into rage so fast it was almost impressive. You can't do that. I opened my eyes, staring at the dim hallway as if I might see my old self standing there, the version of me that always apologized first. Yes, I said evenly. I can. You're punishing your parents because of some child. Don't, I cut in, and my voice came out colder than I expected. She plowed forward anyway. That girl isn't Webb blood. You can't cut us off because your boyfriend's kid. I held the phone away from my ear for a second, inhaled slowly, and then brought it back. Mom, I said, steady and sharp, you made it about blood first, not me. Her voice trembled with fury. These are 2 different things. No, I said, they're the same thing. You told Lily she isn't family, so you don't get to keep taking family money. A strangled noise came through the speaker, half gasp, half scream. You're ungrateful, she hissed. After everything we've done for you. I almost laughed. Because what had they done, really? They'd given me a childhood and then demanded repayment forever. They'd loved my son loudly and punished my daughter quietly. They'd used family as a leash. I have nothing more to say, I replied. Jessica, listen to me. I hung up, and I turned my phone off completely. For a moment, I stood there in the hallway staring at the dark screen, my heartbeat pounding so loud it felt like it might wake the whole house. No victory, just sadness and to strange relief. I stepped back into the kitchen, poured myself coffee I didn't want, and told myself, that's round 1. 2 hours later, while the kids were eating breakfast, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and his face tightened. Tyler, he said quietly. My stomach dropped, because Tyler didn't call unless he wanted something. I gestured for Ethan to stay with the kids and stepped out to the backyard, closing the sliding glass door behind me. Cold air slapped my face. The swing set I'd built for the kids swayed gently, mocking how normal the morning looked. I answered. Tyler's voice exploded into my ear immediately. What the hell are you doing, Jessica? Mom's been crying all morning. She says you cut off their money. I stared out at the gray winter sky, feeling something inside me go still. So she told you, I said. Yeah, because you're acting insane. Insane? I repeated softly. Tyler, Mom told Lily, my daughter, she doesn't have the right to call them grandparents. In front of everyone, on Christmas. Tyler snorted, actually snorted like it was funny. You cut off Mom and Dad because of some kid that isn't even yours? He scoffed. Lily's the kid of some woman who ran off ages ago. Ethan's got you wrapped around his finger. Wake up. There it was. Not concern. Not shock. Contempt. For Ethan. For Lily. For the idea that love counts if it isn't stamped with DNA. My grip tightened on the phone. I spoke slowly, each word clean as ice. Lily is my daughter, and if you're really calling to defend Mom's cruelty, then say what you actually mean. What I mean is you're destroying the family, Tyler snapped. No, I corrected. I'm destroying your allowance. Silence. I smiled without humor, because I'd hit the truth dead center. He didn't care about my parents' hearts. He cared about my payments. The bailouts. The loans. The endless rescue missions for his failed ideas. Tyler's voice dropped, suddenly sharper. You're going to regret this. I stepped closer to the glass door, watching through it as Mason leaned over to share his toast with Lily, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I felt something settle in my chest, a calm I hadn't had in years. "Figure it out yourself, Tyler," I said. "You're 34. Stand on your own." "You can't." I hung up. I stood there in the backyard for a long moment, cold soaking through my socks, phone dark in my hand. And I thought, okay, that's it. 2 calls, 2 lines drawn, storm over. I had no idea what my mother would do next. I really believed that silence would do the rest. That once the money stopped, once the lines were drawn, my parents would be forced to sit with what they'd done. I thought they'd cool down, reflect, maybe even feel something that resembled regret. Instead, my mother went to war. 3 days after Christmas, my phone buzzed while I was at work. Kneeling on a concrete floor with my hands buried inside a control panel, I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Finally, on my lunch break, I checked the message. It was from an old high school friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Jess, you might want to look at Facebook." That was all. My stomach sank before I even opened the app. The first thing I saw was my mother's profile photo. Smiling, wholesome, framed in soft light like she'd never said a cruel word in her life. The post was already blowing up. At the top was a photo of me at 10 years old, grinning beside a brand new bike. Beneath it, a long caption written like a public confession. "This is my daughter. I raised her for 38 years, and now she's cutting off her elderly parents because of a child who isn't our blood. Her boyfriend has manipulated her into turning against the family that gave her everything. I've lost my daughter." My chest felt like it had been wrapped in wire and yanked tight. I scrolled. Hundreds of comments. "Poor mother. Blood is everything. That man isolated her. How can someone choose an outsider over their own parents?" Then I saw Tyler had shared it. "My sister has completely changed since getting involved with him. This is how people get cut off from their real family." I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking so badly I had to lock them together. I wasn't angry at first. I was tired. Tired in a bone-deep way that comes from realizing someone is willing to burn your reputation to stay comfortable in their own cruelty. When I got home that night, Ethan was already pacing the living room. Lily was at the dining table, doing homework like nothing had happened, like she didn't already sense the tremor under our house. "Rachel, no, Ethan." I caught myself and swallowed. Ethan handed me his phone. "She's posting again," he said quietly. I shook my head. "Don't show me." Lily looked up. "Is something wrong?" The question landed like a knife. I forced a smile. "No, sweetheart, just grown-up stuff." She nodded, too easily. That night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan sat beside me on the couch. "Do you want to respond?" he asked. "Tell your side?" I thought about it. I could write a novel, list every slight, every ignored birthday, every cheap gift, every dollar I'd sent, $13,000 over 10 years. I could humiliate them the way they were trying to humiliate me. But then I thought about Lily, about that scarf. I opened my phone and posted one single photo. The blue scarf lay on our wooden coffee table, uneven stitches visible, soft and imperfect and real. The caption was short. "My 14-year-old daughter taught herself to knit for 2 months to make a gift for the woman she called Grandma. That woman refused it and said, 'Your boyfriend's kid doesn't have the right to call us grandparents.'" I have nothing more to explain. No insults, no money mentioned, no rage. Just the truth. Then I put my phone down and didn't touch it for hours. When I finally checked again, the tide had turned. The comments under my post were different. "She said that to a child? That scarf is beautiful. Poor girl. 14 years and still not family? Blood doesn't excuse cruelty." Even under my mother's post, people started asking questions. Is this the same child who's been around for years? Why wouldn't you accept her? What kind of grandmother says that out loud? I didn't feel victorious. I felt done. At home, we focused on Lily. We took her to Easton Town Center, ate pizza, let Mason drag us into stores we didn't need. Ethan surprised her with a small pink laptop she'd been dreaming about. Her first step toward photography, something she'd quietly loved for years without expecting support. Her eyes lit up in a way that made my chest ache. "Really?" she whispered. "For me?" "For you," I said. "Always." 3 days later, a small package arrived. No return name, just an address from a law office in Upper Arlington. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a thick envelope of legal documents and a handwritten letter I recognized immediately. Aunt Helen, my father's older sister, 72, widowed, wealthy, independent, the family's favorite villain, the woman my parents hated because she never needed them and never gave them money. The letter began simply. Jessica, I've read everything online. I didn't call because I wanted you to receive this first. My throat tightened. Inside the legal envelope was a trust document. Lily Mitchell Webb, Mason Webb, both names. I read the letter again, slower. The portion of my estate once intended for Harold and Tyler will now be placed into a trust for your children. Both of them. This is my gift to Lily, my granddaughter. I had to sit down. Ethan hovered, afraid to speak. The letter continued. Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by choice. You chose Lily. I choose both of your children. Tell Lily I would be honored to receive that scarf. I promise to wear it every winter. Tears slid down my face before I even realized I was crying. For the first time since Christmas night, the weight on my chest loosened. Someone saw her. Someone chose her. And for the first time in 10 years, it wasn't just us. I sat there for a long time with Aunt Helen's letter in my hands, staring at her handwriting like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Ethan finally sat down beside me, careful, like I was something fragile he didn't want to startle. She really did this? He asked softly. I nodded. My throat wouldn't cooperate enough for words. For years, Aunt Helen had been a story more than a presence. The difficult sister, the one who refused to lend money, the one my parents said was cold, selfish, obsessed with control. But sitting there, holding legal proof that she had just done more for my children than my parents ever had for Lily, I realized something unsettling. Helen wasn't cold. She was clear. And clarity terrifies people who survive on manipulation. That night, after Mason was asleep, I called Lily into the living room. She came down slowly, wary in that way kids get when they sense something important but don't know if it's good or bad. She perched on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap, eyes darting between me and Ethan. Am I in trouble? She asked quietly. My heart cracked. No, I said immediately. You're the opposite of in trouble. She frowned, confused. I took a breath and told her everything. About Aunt Helen, about the letter, about the trust fund, about someone in this family, someone she barely knew, who had looked at the situation and decided Lily belonged without conditions. Lily didn't cry at first. She just listened, very still, very carefully. When I finished, her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. Instead, she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around me so tightly it knocked the breath out of my lungs. Thank you, she whispered. Not thank you, Jessica. Not thank you, Mom Jess. Just thank you. I hugged her back, pressing my face into her hair, breathing her in like this was the moment I'd been chasing for a decade. Then her voice came again, quieter, braver. Does that mean someone wants the scarf? I laughed through tears. Yes, she asked for it, specifically. Lily's lips trembled, then curved upward, slow, unsure, but real. I'll fix the loose stitch, she said seriously. Just one part came out wrong. Behind us, there was a small sound. We turned to see Mason standing at the edge of the hallway in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing one eye. I heard, he said simply. She's our aunt now? Ethan smiled weakly. Something like that, buddy. Mason nodded, satisfied. Okay. And that was it. No jealousy, no confusion, no resentment. Just acceptance. Because kids understand fairness better than adults ever will. The next weeks passed strangely quietly. My parents didn't call again. Neither did Tyler. At first, I thought they were regrouping, plotting another angle, another guilt-laced ambush. But then, reality started to leak through the cracks. Bills don't care about pride. Without my monthly payments, things unraveled faster than I expected. The supplemental insurance lapsed. Repairs got delayed. Credit cards filled up. Tyler stopped answering their calls once he realized there was nothing left to extract. I heard all of this secondhand through distant relatives and whispers. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Because at home, something else was happening. Lily was changing. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, like someone who had been holding their breath for years, finally letting air back into their lungs. She laughed more. She argued with Mason over the TV remote instead of immediately giving in. She started taking photos again, of sunsets, of the dog down the street, of Ethan asleep on the couch with his mouth open. One evening, as I was folding laundry, Lily leaned against the doorframe watching me. Jess, she said. Yeah? If people say stuff again, she hesitated. I don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt anymore, right? I put the towel down and crossed the room. No, I said firmly. You never did. But I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to. She nodded, absorbing it like a truth she was finally allowed to believe. A week later, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. It was a single sentence. You've ruined everything. No name. I didn't need one. I deleted it. because for the first time, ruining their comfort had finally protected my children. A year has passed since that Christmas night. Not in a dramatic movie montage way. No sudden miracles, no tearful apologies knocking on our door. Just time, quiet, steady, honest time, doing what it always does, revealing who people really are when there's nothing left to take. My parents never apologized. Not to me, not to Ethan, and certainly not to Lily. At first, they tried to posture, telling relatives they were giving me space, that I was going through a phase. But space doesn't pay insurance bills. Pride doesn't fix a leaking roof. And eventually, the house in Westerville, the one I grew up in, went on the market. I heard about it from a cousin. They had to sell, she said carefully, like she was afraid I'd feel guilty. I didn't. I felt sad. Because love would have cost them nothing. Tyler disappeared completely after word spread about Aunt Helen's trust. No more texts, no more calls, no more fake concern, dressed up as family loyalty. I imagine he went looking for another funding source, another person willing to confuse love with obligation. I wish him well, from very far away. As for us, life didn't get louder. It got calmer. The $1,200 a month I used to send into a void now stays where it belongs. We opened a savings account for Lily's first car when she goes to college. Mason joined the football team he'd been dreaming about. Ethan, who had carried more weight than I realized, started sleeping better, laughing more. And once a month, I take him to a spa downtown because love doesn't just survive stress. It needs rest. Lily still has scars. Healing isn't linear. There are moments when a comment from a stranger or a question from a classmate about grandparents makes her go quiet. But now she doesn't swallow it alone. She talks. She asks. She lets herself feel. And that matters more than pretending everything's fine. 3 months ago, a package arrived from Switzerland. Inside was a photo. Aunt Helen stood in front of snow-covered mountains, smiling like she'd cracked a private joke with the world. Around her neck was a familiar blue scarf, uneven stitches and all. On the back she'd written, "Tell Lily I wear it proudly, every winter." Lily held that photo for a long time. Then she smiled. Not the polite one, not the practiced one, the real one, the kind that reaches the eyes. That night, as I tucked her in, she looked up at me and said something small that landed bigger than anything else in this story. "I'm glad you chose me." I swallowed hard and brushed her hair back. "I will," I said, every single time. That's the part people don't like to hear. Choosing a child, especially one who isn't blood, means being willing to lose people who only love you conditionally. It means letting bridges burn when they're built on cruelty. It means accepting that sometimes the family you're born into will never become the family you deserve. And that's okay, because the family you build, the one that protects, chooses, and stands up without being asked, that's the one worth everything. That's the end of my story. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this matter to you, don't forget to support the channel.